Hello, I'm Dana Brame, and I wanted to give my presentation on Thomas Jefferson. I'm in Brother Marshall's history class right now, and we learned a lot about him this last quarter or semester, and so I just wanted to learn more about him and how it applies to education instead of just with the Constitution. So a couple things about him, just kind of like a little biography. He was born in April of 1743 in Virginia, in Charlottesville. And he went to the College of William and Mary. That's his alma mater. He was married. He had two kids, Mary and Martha, which I thought was kind of cool from the Bible. His wife's name was Martha as well, so one of his daughters was named after his wife. And he actually had a ton of grandkids as well, and great-grandkids, and a lot of them lived with him. And he loved to play games with them and spend time with his family, so he was a really big family-oriented man, and I think that's awesome. He was the third president of the United States from March of 1801 to March of 1809. And he had actually a lot of different occupations. You would think, with somebody as prestigious as the president, they might be bigger or better. But like some of the things that he was a governor of Virginia. He was a statesman, a planter, a lawyer, a philosopher, an inventor, an architect, and a teacher. And his nickname is the father of the Declaration of Independence. He died in 1826, so those are kind of just some basic facts about him. And his major contributions to education were actually more just the idea of education, not necessarily specific things that are applied now. Like he didn't come up with a new theory or philosophy, but in his time and where he lived, there was a lot of farming going on, and people didn't have the money or the time available to send their kids to school. They needed them to help on the farm. And where he was at, education, he felt was extremely important because liberty was extremely important. And for people to be able to understand what was going on in politics and really continue to keep their responsibilities and be totally free, they needed to have at least enough education that they could read so they understood history and where they had come from, and so they could understand where people were at as far as what they believed in politics, so they would know who to vote for. Well, his basic program, the big thing that he suggested was a bill for the more general diffusion of knowledge, and that was in 1779. And basically, a quote that really summarizes this is from him: "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." And the program that he suggested said that all children, girls and boys, would receive at least 3 years of public supported education. So taxpayers would pay for that. They would study reading and writing and arithmetic. And basically beyond that, if an individual was successful, if they were really thriving and doing well, they could move forward. But basically they would have to have the support or payment from their family, but everyone would get that 3 years for free. And again, on this, what he felt beyond just the politics of it was for somebody to be truly happy, and he believed in that with the Declaration of Independence. They believed that men have the right to pursue happiness, and he believed that for people to be able to pursue that happiness, they had to have a base level of knowledge, and that's what he wanted to provide them with. So then the next thing that was his big idea was that he didn't want the government to run the schools. They had just spent all of this time and energy becoming free from a tyrant king in England, and they had spent even more time and energy debating and arguing and trying to figure out what the best government would look like and how to avoid their government becoming a tyranny as well. And they didn't want government to have any power that it shouldn't have. If they felt like the more power the people had, the less likely the government would turn tyrannical. So with that, he wanted these elementary schools. They were going to be set up in 5 to 6 mile ranges throughout the state. And he wanted them to be governed by the parents, by the people. And one quote that he has that I really liked said, if it is believed that these elementary schools will be better managed by the governor and council or any other general authority of government than by parents within each ward, it is a belief against all experience. And basically his thought was the parents are the ones that are there closest to the situation. They're the ones that have the highest stake in the outcome of the education. And because of that, they're going to do the best job of governing it. And so he wanted the tax money to fund the education, but he wanted it to be run locally. And the last main point that he really had was that there are students in lower socioeconomic backgrounds who could really thrive in school. And what he proposed was that the students that were really thriving that didn't have the funds to continue should be allowed to continue funded by the state. And his idea with that was that it was not only the responsibility of the state, but it was also in the best interest of the state to help close the gap. And basically what he means by that is that these students that are bright and smart and really could go places, if they don't get the financial help they need to go to school, the state's going to lose out on potential amazing people that could help, with the ruling and with the just all of that. And so he really, really pushed that. And then another contribution that he had was he actually started the University of Virginia, and he believed that books were important, extremely important in education. And so he believed they were so important and integral that he designed the university actually completely around the library. So those are kind of some of his contributions. And how those contributions affect me. His ideas and philosophy are really what started the ball rolling for education. At that time, it was unheard of to have the tax money pay for this education. It was really not something that the general public was agreeing with, just because of all of the things that they needed to do, and they didn't have time and they didn't have money and their kids were needed at home and everything. And his ideas are basically the beginning of what we have now for our public education system. So that's kind of cool. And then some personal connections that I have that as I studied about him, I really enjoyed was that he really did love books, like a lot. And in 1814, the original Library of Congress was attacked by British troops, and all of the books were burnt. And he actually offered his personal library as a replacement. And when they ended up switching his library over and restocking the Library of Congress, it turned out that he had 6,487 books. And you can see back there, I've got some books, but I doubt I have more than 100, 150. And I'm in awe of how many books he had. I love how much he loved learning. And that's one of the things that really made him who he was as far as the Constitution is concerned. He read everything he could get his hands on so that he would have the knowledge he needed to help put our government into place. So that's really cool. And I also really like, again, his love of books, just because it does mean that if students are able to read and to understand, their ideas of the world are going to be bigger. And as far as the freedoms that they have are concerned, they're less likely to have the wool pulled over their eyes if they have the ability to really read and love education. So that's a little bit about Thomas Jefferson, and I think he's awesome. I really have enjoyed learning more about him, and I'm really grateful for everything he added to our education.